It started with an email from the mom saying she was coming to a trapper talk. She's bringing her daughter, a millennial, ends up being 29 years old. Okay, they come to the talk. And then I get an email from the daughter, Sarah. And she says she has a story for me for my Touched by Heaven podcast. Something she thought was a ghost story turns out to be a God story. I go, well, what happened that night? She said, well, a number of things. She says, you have to understand, I am a classic millennial. You know, I went to Mass when I was, a kid, and then when I moved away, I stopped going. I had a hard time relating to things that happened thousands of years ago. It just seemed old and everything, and I wanted to believe. It's just difficult to believe. She said, then I heard you talk, and you had me looking online at documentaries on Our Lady of Guadalupe that night until 2 a.m. And then the next night, I'm up until 2 a.m. looking at all the stories you talked about, the science of Our Lady of Guadalupe in that image, the science in Eucharistic miracles, that when bread turns into heart tissue and type AB blood, and that the blood itself shows signs of having one parent but not two, an earthly mom, but where's dad, everything the Annunciation says. And she said, you just, I don't know, you kind of had me reeling there. My husband, who's not a Catholic, came home and said, wow, I didn't know I was going to come home to the Vatican. And she's going, this is amazing. These are things I've never heard before. Never heard about the fire at the tomb of Christ every Easter, all these things. And she's mystified. She's telling me, I'm mystified why the church is so silent about this, why it's not more vocal. Why do they spend so many years documenting this stuff to see if it's true, sometimes decades, and then when they find out, that why aren't they telling us this? And I've said, well, you're preaching to the choir here with me. And she says, the word she used was, this is a living thing. And I'm thinking, the church, the Bible, it's all a living thing. And she says, I want to start going back to Mass every Sunday now. I thought, well, good for you. I said, you're starting to see the is now. As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. And she says, this is real. This is the way church should feel to me. And then she starts telling me her ghost story that isn't a ghost story. I say, okay, what's your story? And it'll be on an upcoming Touched by Heaven podcast. But she talks about how 9 years ago, when she was 20 years old, her grandfather passed away. So she's going to the hospital for those final moments, actually, with her dad and with her mom. It's her dad's dad who's passing away. They get to the hospital. They're walking towards the room, and this nurse walks out, dressed rather oddly, dressed like nurses used to be dressed, like decades ago. She's got her little nurse hat on, and she's wearing this blue cardigan, and she's walking away down the hall, and Sarah's dad just looks at him, and they go, what? And he says, that's the way my mom used to dress as a nurse. That's she had a blue cardigan. She's got the little hat. Interesting. So they go in. These are the final minutes. Grandfather's breathing is getting erratic and shallow. And was that his last breath? Was that his last breath? That kind of thing. And the nurse comes back in again, doesn't say anything, comes in, looks at some things, walks out. Okay. And then it looks like it's over. And then the grandfather's eyes pop open. He sits up in bed. He looks up to the heavens. He reaches to the heavens. And they're looking at him and kind of like, he's seeing something. He's obviously seeing something. And then the hands come down. He looks at Sarah's dad, his son. And then he looks at mom. And then he looks at Sarah. And then back to the dad. And then Sarah's dad says, it's okay, Pops. It's okay. You want to go? It's okay. And Sarah's dad then takes him in his arms, and they kind of lean back down. And then he passes. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And a reminder, it doesn't end here. It's there's something else, there's something else. And they're all just witnessing this something else. And, the nurse doesn't come back. That part's over. The welcoming committee, if you will, of grandfather's wife, grandma, it was in this picture as well. And all of this is just reigniting Sarah to the reality of how real all of this is all the time. So she's now, listening to all the Touched by Heaven episodes and seeing all these collisions of heaven and earth. And I told her, actually it was the night of the talk, I mentioned the latest song that's been bubbling up, and it had been bubbling up that entire week of the talk. And when we spiritualize the lyrics, there's Jesus talking to his church. It's an old song. It's called Come Back to Me, an Oscar Hammerstein song. I saw it in a movie once a long time ago. And here's the basic lyric. And again, you spiritualize it. You could see Jesus talking to his church that's wandered away. He says, hear my voice, like the Bible says, my sheep know my voice. So here's Jesus saying, hear my voice. ride a train, steal a car, hop a freight, grab a star. Just come back to me. Catch a plane, catch a breeze on your hands, on your knees. Swim or fly, only please come back to me. On a mule, in a jet, place yourself in a net. I don't care. This is where you should be. And the song finishes up with, do I have to scream and yell until I'm blue? I'm wanting you to come back to me. So welcome back, Sarah. We're all happy about it. Your family's happy. Jesus is happy. Welcome back. If you want to find out more about where Trapper Jack is speaking, or maybe he's right for your church or organization, conference, whatever it may be, we have a link in the show notes to trapperjackspeaks.com. In the meantime, see you next week on MML.